Welcome to the Blue Leadership Podcast, hosted by retired multi-agency chief of police from the state of New York, Dennis Nair. Blue Leadership is a podcast by law enforcement for today's law enforcement leaders, taking you inside the experiences and careers of law enforcement experts from across the country.
Well, Maddie, thank you for that introduction. And today's guest is Ben Opfar. So if we want to define a lifelong learner, Ben is that person. Quick introduction about who Ben is, and then we'll kind of get rolling here. So Ben started his law enforcement career in 1994. Prior to that, he did 4 years of service with the United States Air Force. He worked in the Explosive Ordnance Division. He was a police officer in Texas, Georgia, Arizona, and Wyoming. And we're going to talk about that because to do that, went through 4 police academies, which it is amazing. And he's a graduate of the FBI LEADA Trilogy series, which is a huge accolade. He's Rocky Mountain Command College. He has an associate's degree in law enforcement technology and a bachelor's degree in law enforcement administration. Currently working on his law enforcement and public safety leadership master's degree here at the University of San Diego. And without further ado, Ben, welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Chief Nair. Appreciate that.
And what I should say right now is what makes this even more special is right now, Ben is working as a risk management expert for Gillette College in Wyoming, and he's still pursuing this acclaimed master's degree, which just really ties into someone who is a lifelong learner. And since he's retired, is still putting his skills to the test. And what I want to start with, Ben, 4 police academies. Can you just talk a little bit about that and what your motivation was to do that?
Sure. So the biggest motivation, I think, for it was it all started when I got out of the military, and I was going to Amarillo Police Department. I'd shotgunned out applications, didn't know where I was going to go, and my father he had been diagnosed with cancer, and so I went home to see him before going to the Amarillo Police Academy, and I got to see him in the driveway on March 31st, and basically gave him a hug, and he told me, he said, "Son, my life's over. Yours is just beginning. You're going off to start something new. I'm passing away. Don't come back for the funeral." And so those words stuck with me of I'm making a life to make him proud. And so waving goodbye in the driveway that day was the last time I ever saw him. That was the toughest choice I made, to never come back home for the funeral and be with my family who might have needed me as well. But that was his choice. So that was what I did. And that kind of drove me into the perseverance, I guess, the drive to push me to do my best and succeed at it. He died 8 days after I got to the academy. So
wow.
Not to put that on down, I'm all good with it and all of that good stuff. But so I did go to Amarillo, and it was pretty nice. And I got to go to the bomb squad. Was my first assignment there. Actually, before I was a police officer, because the lieutenant pulled me in and he said, "Ben, I want you to," he says, "Are you military?" I said, "Absolutely." He said, "Bomb disposal." "Yes, sir." He opens his desk, throws me a pager, and he says, "You're on the bomb squad." I said, "I haven't even got out through FTO yet." And he said, "Yeah, but we can teach you to do that, but we can't teach those other guys to do the bomb disposal." So that set the course for the drive and the motivation to do the academy and do well there.
And that was the word I was thinking as you're explaining, your departure to your first academy is there could be no more powerful motivation than what you went to the academy with that conversation with your father.
Yeah, it was pretty powerful.
Yeah, for sure. So now, out of all those academies, did the recruits start seeing you once you started going maybe your second and third academy, and obviously especially your fourth? Did they start seeing you as more of a mentor than a peer?
In this, yeah, as I went along, I think they did. Initially, in Texas and Georgia, not so much, because I was new. When I did the Georgia Academy, that was I'd only stayed in Amarillo for 2 years, so my wife wanted to move to Georgia, and I went with her. So did the second academy, but I was still new. It was still exciting. I was gaining confidence. So that kind of kept the drive going there. Um, when I got on to Phoenix, then they started seeing me a little more as I'd been experienced. And I had a good buddy in in Phoenix that was a fellow former law enforcement officer as well. It was his second academy. So we kind of had this little competition going. And between the two of us, we would push each other a little bit harder, which made it a little bit easier to stay engaged with the academy there.
How did you hold up with the fitness component of it? Obviously, you would continually be gaining experience to bring to each academy and knowledge of policy and procedure and the profession. How about the fitness and drill portions? How did that pan out?
Well, if you've ever ran in Phoenix in 3 or 4 in the afternoon in 127 degrees, it's painfully brutal. uh, but I enjoyed it. It got me in the best shape that I ever got. And Phoenix was a different academy setup because the structure, it was intense. It was paramilitary. I really enjoyed that one. Um, but we had mixtures. So my sergeant was from DPS. One of the training staff was from Phoenix. Another one was from Scottsdale. So you got that inter interagency actions that kept the perspective different instead of just one. Whereas in Amarillo, it was more of a uh, in-house, tight knit. This is how we're going to do things here. They all were great, but for different reasons. And then when I got to Wyoming, obviously they looked a little bit more at me like a mentor. I hope, just because uh, some of the staff were young enough to be my sons, but they called me the grandpa. And then the physical fitness that went with that, uh, we did the Special Olympics torch run, and we took it downtown, and they offered us a bus ride back, and they thought, oh yeah, grandpa's going to get on the bus. uh, no, I ran back with them, and I think that was a little bit surprising to them that after that big long run I still pushed them back, and some of them got on the bus, so they kind of got a little bit of flack from some of their fellow classmates.
I love it. That's a great story. And what about now for the academy instructors? Did they give you some level of deference, knowing that okay, this particular, and I'll use the word recruit for lack of a better word, but this person who is now a recruit is actually a seasoned law enforcement veteran. As you were progressing through different academies and you were more and more seasoned as an officer in different states, did they show you any deference?
Yeah, not initially because Amarillo, I was just starting. Georgia, I was still new. It was only 2 years. But Phoenix, when I got there, it was so big and so large that I was just a number there. And there were a lot of veteran officers that had good qualifications and experience. So I didn't really stand out to them. But when I got to Wyoming, we had, like I said, a lot of the instructors themselves only had 5 or 6 years on. And so after already having been retired for 7 years when I went back to my fourth academy, they, they looked at me a little different. I think they didn't try so much to change my bad habits, good habits, whatever I had developed over the years. Uh, Firearms, for example, I had this really bad shake when I was younger, and it developed over the years. And so, if I tried to focus and shoot, I could not. So I had to learn to instinctively shoot, and part of that involved actually learning that in one of the academies in Phoenix, and I turned my sights around backwards so that I couldn't see them, so I wouldn't focus on them, and I was able to actually qualify with way higher scores just instinctively shooting. I don't recommend that for everybody. By all means, please listen to the instructors, and they've got some valuable training and experience, but that was what worked for me. But they accepted that because I had been in it a long time. They didn't try to correct any stances or whatever I was doing differently. So in that aspect, I think they did look at it a little bit different.
Wow. What about defensive tactics, the arrest and control portion? How'd you like that comparing from beginning to the last academy?
it takes a lot longer to heal, I learned. But on a bright note, I had one of the instructors that I was going through and doing my sign off qualification, and he was the bad guy, and I put him down and handcuffed him, and he stood up, and he was the instructor, and he goes, "Wow, I don't think I've ever been handcuffed that fast." So he goes, "You've probably forgotten more than I've ever learned." And I said, "I appreciate that, but you know, I just got to do it like everybody else. It's part of the program."
Wow, that's a great attitude. And obviously, that's the type of attitude one would need to be able to do that because, again, one academy, maybe two, but to do that times four, that's a lot. And one of the things that stood out why I wanted to have you on this show is you've put yourself through a lot of training because you work for some agencies that maybe their budget wasn't there or they couldn't afford, but you wanted to attend. Can you talk a little bit about that? What motivated you to pay out of your own pocket to attend some of the advanced leadership schools you've done?
Absolutely. The biggest, best word I can come up with for that is investment. People want to invest in money. They want to have a good retirement on the end. Invest in yourselves. Um, just being able to say, no, the agency's not going to pay for that. We don't have the money for that. We don't have the funds for that. We don't, whatever. There were some sidebars to that, but to me, I enjoy learning. That's some people de-stress by going out and doing activities or reading a book or whatever. For some reason, I've been drawn and gravitated to. I got to de-stress. I need to add some stress. So I go find some training to do or something to learn. And so I would take vacation time, and I paid out of pocket to when I knew that I was going to be testing for supervisor at my last agency in Wyoming. I I knew that I would have to oral board against everybody. I'd only been with the agency a year, so to boost that up, even though I had all the years of experience, I went ahead and went over to Salt Lake and stayed with my sister and attended a first line supervisor course just to get it on the record and on the resume so that when I went to the interview, I could say, I've invested in myself. I know that I can do this. And let how I compare to the other ones. If they have the attitude of it's one of my big pet peeves, especially after I became a supervisor, for people to say, I'm not going to anything unless they pay for it. That Why are you here? That's what resonates to me is why are you here? Invest in yourself a little bit, invest in the others, protect each other's back. That's what this profession's all about.
For sure. And is that the role when you became a sergeant for the first time?
Yeah, that's why I came back for law enforcement. When I came back for my fourth academy, I had been retired, but I missed it. I didn't realize how much I was going to miss it until I got out there. They say you don't miss it till it's gone. Well, that hit me, and so when I came back, I thought, well, I've done A to Y. The only thing I haven't done is Z. So my whole goal coming back was to go into administration. And I knew that I would need to invest in myself and especially coming back after 7 years off. I had a lot to catch up. A lot of technology took place between 2011 and 2018. So, and there were a lot of things that happened in the overall picture of law enforcement during that time.
Yeah, the landscape changed dramatically. And just to go back to what you just said, technology, you look at from 2011 to 2018, the advent of proliferated use of body worn cameras and tasers with cameras, and then some of these other technologies, license plate readers, and all of these things. Everything was evolving, and yes, like you just said, the landscape was shifting in law enforcement as well. So that had to be a little bit of a shock just to, um, I guess, make the adjustment as well.
Yes, and that's what pushed me, I need to learn, I need to catch up, I need to better myself, I gotta make myself ready. So I also went on to pay my own way through, I attended that Rocky Mountain Command College in Casper, and that's where I learned about FBI LEDA, and with that, I got an interest in it. So I went to the supervisor, and I went to the command, and I went to the executive institutes, and I finished those. I did them all out of pocket, own expense, own dime, own time. One of my good mentors helped me get a scholarship through them for the last class, which helped pay for the course, which was great. David Boggs, one of the past presidents, but he just being able to get that under my belt and to say, okay, now I can go out and I can be a leader. I have some credentials to go with the experience, because that's what I wanted. I wanted to go from I did A to Y. Now I wanted to do Z, and so that was the ultimate goal. And so that was my whole goal going through when I came back.
Wow. A goal, and then a goal you saw through fruition. And, one of the things that stands out, and it shows, I'm sure the listeners or viewers can see in this conversation, you have a very positive attitude. And having had you in one of my classes, you're a humble person, very accomplished. You have a lot of gratitude. What is it that you're able to maintain that? Because the law enforcement profession is very good at creating cynicism, negative attitudes. You're exposed to a lot of negative, so it becomes part of who a person is, sometimes not in a good way. And you've managed to avoid that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So I think one of the biggest things that helped me in this journey has been, um, when I retired from Phoenix. I took that break. I was probably there in that burnout stage with everybody else, where you start to get those kind of attitudes. I needed that break after Phoenix. I really did. It gave me a chance to recharge my batteries, focus. Yeah, I do miss it. I want to be back in it. But then you start thinking about all of the good things, and there's so many good things that happen that we tend to overlook. And you know, we have a lot of bad things, but we have to remember that 95. I don't know how accurate these numbers are. I'm just pulling them out of the air. But I heard one time that 95% of the crime is committed by 5% of the people. So unfortunately that's who we have to deal with all the time. And so we do get that loss of focus. So you need to develop some things on the outside. You need to figure out what it is. Every mental health and physical health class will tell you, find something outside of law enforcement. Make some friends that aren't in law enforcement. Get out and meet some people in the public. There are good people out there, and there are good things that happen. But when you get one of those positives come along, and I'll just use an example. Uh, when I was a school resource officer in Phoenix, I did it for 8 years, and I really enjoyed that position. But one of the students, unfortunately, tragically, uh, passed away, and the parents, I had that connection with them. They asked me to be the pallbearer at her funeral, so I helped carry her to the grave and was the pallbearer for her. And the investigation took a turn, and it ended up with a 1.5 year investigation that I helped the detective division work through with the school and coordinated some of that. And then the detective allowed me to go out because of all my involvement in it and my attachment to the case. She allowed me to make the arrest, but I ended up arresting both of those parents for severe neglect resulting in her death. So having that connection with them to be able to ask me to help bury her, but then be her voice to say they didn't get away with it. It's hard to explain how that's a positive, but to me, that was just, okay, there are good things that happen. A good thing came of this, and the bad people went away. And that just, or when you find a missing child or a runaway juvenile and you take them home, there's just so many good things that happen
Yeah,
that,
I think I know the purpose of what you've done, and the meaningfulness of what you've done matters and has consequence to people who need closure or justice or whatever. I think that maybe is what you're expressing.
absolutely.
Wow, that's key. And I think, I used to call them gold nuggets, the things that just overshadow the negatives and then make it that someone still has the drive and the desire. And it's good to notice when I think it stood out that when you took that break, it gave you that time to recharge. And you had that point, hey, you know what? I've had my time, you've had enough, or no, I still have more I want to give. And I think that had value. And, so right now, you're in a risk management role and you still decided to go back and earn a master's degree in law enforcement and public safety leadership. And I have an idea of what the answer is, but I'd love to hear from you. What is it that motivated you now in a civilian support role that you're still motivated to get your MS Lepsel degree?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great lead into that. So I got hired as the risk manager, which is kind of up there in the college. I didn't need to have the degree. I don't need to have the degree, but I wanted to complete it because I'd actually started it twice, not from Lepsel, but I started a long time ago after I got my bachelor's in a program, but internet technology was new. The computers just wouldn't work and we just couldn't make the system work. So I had to drop that program. And time went on and whatnot. And then when I got into the leadership and I got the Trilogy award, and I started thinking, I'm not done. I want to do more. I want to fit in at the college and be part of them, even though I don't have to. I want to, um, and that is part of leadership. Is just you've got to better yourself. You've got to keep improving. You've got to keep going. So I looked at all the different programs and I fell in love with the format of Lepsel, how it's structured, it's one at a time. You just can't beat it. Um, and the fact that my trilogy allowed me to substitute 6 of the credits towards that was huge, especially like everything else. This isn't something I've got a scholarship for. The college is not paying for this. This is all out of my pocket. It's me better going on to get that myself again. And I don't say that to brag, really, but invest in yourself. Please invest in yourself.
Yeah, and it comes across very clearly, like, your whole history is of pure investment in yourself. And um, I can only imagine once you complete this master's program, I know there'll be something else. And who knows? Do you think you'd want to go back into active capacity?
I definitely want to, at minimum, get back at least as far as either instructing or consulting at minimum. I would be interested in, I'm not done yet. A good thing is, if you've ever heard Paul Butler speak, if you know who he is, most people have probably heard of him. Some people have, some haven't, but great guy, friend. I consider him a mentor as well. He speaks and he says the plans don't always work, but you have to have a purpose, and that purpose is what keeps us going. The purpose behind it. You have to have a purpose. The plan never always goes through, but you got to have a purpose. And my purpose is I'm not done yet.
That's so true. And I truly believe that the next chapter, whatever that'll be, will be something that I would probably want to say, let's bring you back for a round 2 interview. But before that, what I want to ask, I have 2 questions. One of them is, what advice do you have for now people starting out? You've seen the changes, since 1994 to now, and the landscape of law enforcement's changed, and you still have a high regard and a positive outlook. Out of all of your experiences of 4 academies, lifelong learner, amazing command schools, what message do you have for those listening and viewing this?
I think my message, and I'm going to play a spin here and kind of pun off of it a little bit. The biggest message I think I could give would be AI. And I don't mean artificial intelligence, because we all know that artificial means fake and intelligence, when it's set with military doesn't always conjoin. But attitude and integrity, that's my AI. You got to have a positive attitude. You've got to have integrity. And I'd just like to quote real quick from Carl Eller, and I want to read this because I don't want to mess it up. But Carl Eller said, when you're looking at the characteristics of how to build your personal life, first comes integrity, second motivation, third capacity, fourth understanding, fifth knowledge, and last and least experience. And then if you research the quote a little bit, it goes on to say, without integrity, motivation is dangerous. Without motivation, capacity is impotent. Without capacity, understanding is limited. Without understanding, knowledge is meaningless. And without knowledge, experience is blind. So it all boils down to integrity. You have to have integrity and a positive attitude, and be happy when others succeed. Don't try to be that one that I've got to do this to be better than you. I don't care who gets the credit in the end. I could live another 20 years and do law enforcement as long as the job got done and people learned and the profession advanced. That's all I want.
That's great. And this actually may even cover my last question I always like to conclude with is if there's a specific leadership philosophy or a leadership book or a podcast or something that you think has value. Obviously, that was one very valuable quotation that you provided. Is there anything else philosophy-wise, attitude and integrity, huge? Anything else that you'd like to leave, whether it's a book, a podcast, or something else you want to follow that up with?
There's several books out by Arbinger Institute, getting out of the box, self-deception kind of stuff. Those are some excellent reads, I think. Understanding how the boxes are created, how to get out of them, and it's all about building them yourselves. And we put ourselves in the box, and we need to, just learn as much as you can. Knowledge is the true power. I'm not a big guy. I'm a small guy. I had to learn the hard way to, life is going to knock you down and send you tumbles. When I first came into this profession, it was you had to be 6 foot tall, 250 pounds, and drag your knuckles. And I couldn't get in. And then the military, allowed me to get in the back door, kind of, so to speak, to bomb disposal. But that was a changing time when more women were coming into the profession as well, which was a great thing. And the size factors and the barriers started breaking down, and it turned out well. And we're ever changing, and just follow those changes, learn about those changes, stay up on top of the education, and go home safe at night. The other thing I did want to do that we didn't do, I'd just like to say congratulations to all of the last week's graduates. Kudos to you. Hats off.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you'll be one of them soon. And I think the last part, did you say be humble?
Definitely be humble. Like I said, I don't care who gets the credit. I don't want it. I just better other people. Focus on making them better. See them succeed. Be happy for their successes. Don't try to hold them down to make yourself look better.
Best way I could think to wrap things up. Be humble. Do it for the right reasons. Lifelong learner. And I like how you incorporated that. Obviously, the congrats to the graduates, but also that key 2 words: stay safe, because the world's not getting any less dangerous, and I think that's always an important reminder. Ben, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your experiences, kind of letting the listeners and viewers know what has motivated you. And I think the people who watch this podcast are going to get a lot out of it. So Maddie's going to come in. Thank you once again.
Thank you. I absolutely appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you for taking the time to meet the law enforcement heroes and leaders who are part of the MS Upsell family. You can find more episodes of Blue Leadership on Facebook and YouTube. And if you would like to learn more about the LEPSL program, visit us at criminaljustice.sandiego.edu.